Welcome to Martyn, Lucas Investor. I'm Vaz, and we are covering the war in Iran, the war between United States and their allies on Iran. We are covering this, and we are covering the market reaction. As you can see behind me, we have some live feed from the ground. We have now BBC with their news coming through. So bear with me. Let me just check if everything is coming through. All feed should be good. So let's just bring this on.
Hello. The final day of February has
BBC weather,
rain,
okay. We are not interested in weather yet, in the British weather. We've got some allegedly, Iran has launched Qatar hypersonic missiles in retaliatory strikes. This was confirmed by, or this was announced by the Iranian national TV. It's not confirmed yet, but we have some footage from the ground as well. We are monitoring social media sector. We are monitoring all the news for you. We are waiting for the reaction. And now we have BBC coming in live, so we will have some review and more updates on this.
Live from Tel Aviv, I'm Clive Myrie.
They've got a lag. There's a massive lag between...
And I'm Katrina Perry, live in Washington. This is BBC News.
Between the reporters.
The US and Israel launched strikes on Iran from the air and the sea in what they say will be a multi-day operation dubbed by the Pentagon Epic Fury. Strikes in Tehran and right across the country, the Iranian media reports at least 53 people have been killed at a school in the south. Iran has already been retaliating with attacks on American air bases in Bahrain, and there have been explosions in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, Iraq, and the UAE.
President Trump released a video on Truth Social in the early hours of the morning here in the US.
A short time ago,
just let me know. We will address this. Let me know, those who joined me from the previous event, let me know in the chat if you joined me from the previous event, because I'm not sure if the transfer was as smooth as it was supposed to be. Please let me know in the chat if you are coming from the previous event or if you are coming here to the new event. Definitely hit the like button on your way in. We will be covering this and market reaction all day.
Explosions across Israel as a state of emergency is declared, and the country says a new barrage of Iranian missiles are on their way. In a statement, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there is an existential threat against his country. And Iran appears to have struck Dubai. There's a plume of smoke near the Fairmont, the Palm Hotel.
And live from London, I'm Christian Fraser. We'll be bringing you all the analysis of this huge military operation with Mikey Kay and the Security Brief. And we'll be answering your questions as this unprecedented event unfolds across the region.
You're with BBC News,
we are covering
live from Tel Aviv in Israel.
We are now covering the war on Iran. We are covering the retaliation of Iran as well. We are covering the market reaction. Stay where you are. We will find out more. I'm working with Martyn. We are bringing you the live coverage as well.
Our position here in Tel Aviv, suggesting incoming, perhaps drone or missile fire from Iran. Usually at this stage, we'd be running down towards the shelter down in the basement, but we have our flat jackets on and we'll wait for further instructions. But Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about the need to remove an existential threat from his country.
President Trump has said the US and Israel have launched what he called major combat operations, saying the objective was to defend the American people by eliminating what he says are imminent threats from Iran and from the Iranian regime. The retaliation, though, has already started from Iran. Bahrain says the US base there has come under attack. Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq and Saudi Arabia have all had missiles fired into their countries.
Well, the air raid sirens, they're still sounding. You can hear them, and there have been explosions across numerous Israeli cities. The defense minister here, Israel Katz, has declared a special and permanent state of emergency. The country's airspace has been closed and all schools are shut down. Israeli defense forces say dozens of missiles are being fired into the country. 7,000 reservists have been called up.
Now, Israeli officials say Iran's supreme leader Khamenei and the Iranian president have been targeted. 7 missiles have hit the presidential palace, and there have been strikes around the supreme leader's compound as well, we're hearing. The attack follows, of course, weeks of tension in the region, with US forces massing around Iran in recent days and weeks. A huge military presence gathered in the Gulf there. We will be live with our correspondents in the region in just a moment. But first, Joe Inwood has this report now on the developments so far.
As Bitcoin reaction on the screen, I will show you XRP, Ethereum. I'll be following more indices that are coming through live.
In Israel left no room for doubt. They want to topple the Iranian regime. Footage is still emerging amidst an internet blackout, but it's clear that a vast air campaign is being carried out right across the country.
The United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated.
So what and who is the US going to target? Well, Iran's ballistic missiles will be top of any list, an attempt to blunt their ability to respond. Iran's Navy, seen here on exercise last week, will also be seen as a soft target. The key question, will they kill the president, Masoud Pezeshkian, or the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? Iran promised to
Allegedly, he's been already taken down. Allegedly, he's been already killed. That's not confirmed yet, but we may have some update on it soon.
The country's Iron Dome missile defences already in action. The Prime Minister warned his people there would be a price to pay.
Challenging days await us. Every military action involves risk, but the risk of doing nothing is greater. Because if we do not act, we will get a nuclear Iran, an Iran with tens of thousands of ballistic missiles.
Some of those ballistic missiles have already been fired in response. The US has a vast military footprint across the Middle East. And already impacts have been seen at the US naval base in Bahrain, headquarters of the 5th Fleet. Qatar hosts the Al Udeid air base. The last time Iran struck, it was telegraphed in advance and largely performative. Not this time. There have also been reports of drones being intercepted over Iraq. Knowing exactly what is happening inside Iran is difficult at this point, with most communications down. But State TV broadcast this statement.
According to the information obtained from these two corrupt regimes, their operations in Tehran and other cities will continue. Therefore, as much as possible while maintaining calm, travel to other cities to stay safe from the evils of these two regimes.
In January, when widespread street protests gripped the country, President Trump promised help was on its way before taking no immediate action. In today's speech, he said that help had finally arrived.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond.
Iran now faces the biggest military build-up in the Middle East for more than 20 years, and a US administration which has explicitly called for its destruction. It seems likely this conflict will escalate in dangerous and unpredictable ways. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
We are live covering market reaction. You can see Bitcoin reacting to the war in Iran. You can see XRP, you can see Ethereum currently holding the levels after a slight dip. So we are covering this, we are covering market reaction. Hit the like button if you are new to this channel. Definitely subscribe, because we are bringing you live updates on most of major events. Like today, we'll be bringing you all day coverage, all day feed from the war in Iran. I'm working on bringing you more news, more updates. We have a tweet here. We have a tweet here from Bin Tweets. Iran missiles hit. There's a nice map with it as well. So retaliation by Iran. United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, Al Dhafra Air Base. We've got Qatar hit as well. Al Udeid Air Base. We've got Kuwait hit. Ali Al Salem Air Base. We've got Bahrain, United States 5th Fleet Base. We've got Jordan, missiles intercepted over airspace. We've got missiles fired on Israel as well, many intercepted. And here is the map. You can see it's very intense as well. So we are covering this, we are following multiple sources, we are covering the market reaction. Definitely hit the like button. If we get 100 likes, YouTube will start promoting this, and we can get more people in. You can have chat. You can have chat in the. You can talk in the chat room as well. The more people get in, the more opinions we get in, and the better we can feel the investor sentiment as well. Bitcoin currently moving slightly up, so is XRP and Ethereum as well. Let's see what we've got from BBC. So
the raid to capture Nicolas Maduro, for example, or the July last year airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. So it's likely he'll be monitoring that, and we may well hear from him on Truth Social or on social media.
But thanks for that. To you, Hugo Bachega in Jerusalem. I've just been describing a little bit of the scene here in Tel Aviv with the Iron Dome system working overtime. What's the situation where you are and the wider picture across Israel?
Yeah, Clive, so we had a similar situation just moments ago here in Jerusalem, where we could hear and see the air defense systems activated. This happened just 10-15 minutes after the Israeli military again said that a new wave of missiles had been identified, missiles that had been fired by the Iranian military targeting Israel. Now, obviously, this has been the situation throughout the day, as you said, air raid alerts across the country, and then the sound, the huge, explosions from the air defenses. Now, there have been reports of at least 3 sites in central Israel that have been hit, and in one of those sites, 1 person was injured. So the first reports of places that could have been hit by these missiles that have been fired by Iran in this response to these American and Israeli attacks. But Clive, you know, this is a country with a very sophisticated air defense protection. We saw that last year during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, that the air defenses here intercepted the vast majority of the missiles and drones that were fired by Iran. And it seems that this is the situation again today. Now, there is a state of emergency here in Israel, across the country. Gatherings have been banned. Obviously, obviously, the public has been instructed to go to shelters, to follow the instructions that have been issued by the authorities. And moments ago, the Prime Minister's office issued a picture showing the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on a phone call with President Trump.
Yes, we are 100% live.
The Prime Minister in Israel has been supporting some kind of action against Iran. This is a joint operation between the Americans and the Israelis. And earlier today, when announcing this operation to the Israeli public, the Prime Minister said in a statement that the objective here was to remove the existential threat posed by Iran. This is something that the Prime Minister has been saying for a very long time, for decades, when he talks about the existential threat posed by the Iranian regime. And he also suggested that one of the objectives of this campaign is to create a situation for a regime change in Iran.
Hugo, thank you. Hugo Bashega there in Jerusalem. Let's go to Barbara Plett-Usher, who's in the Qatari capital, Doha. And explosions there throughout the day, Barbara, too.
Well, there have been missile strikes or missile attacks throughout the day in Qatar and also in other countries in this region. We have heard explosions regularly, and the last ones maybe within the last hour or so. The Qataris say that they are intercepting the missiles, and so are other countries like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and so on. But there have been a number of strikes. So, for example, in Kuwait, a drone hit the international airport, and in Bahrain, you had a missile hit the U.S. base there for naval ships, its Fifth Fleet. It's not clear what the destruction or the damage was. In the United Arab Emirates, one person was killed by falling debris, and quite dramatically, a luxury hotel there, the Fairmont Palm, is on fire, apparently also because of shrapnel from an intercepted missile. So you've had the whole region obviously completely on edge all day, with the regional governments and the regional armies working to stop the missiles coming in. This is something that they had tried to avert. There was a lot of diplomacy beforehand trying to mediate between Iran and the United States to prevent this kind of conflict, because there's a great deal of fear that the war could spill over the borders and destabilize the region. But in the meantime, they are now dealing with the fallout. Both Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have issued quite strongly worded statements in which they say they condemn the attacks as a violation of international law and national sovereignty. They say they reserve the right to respond, although they will be making that calculation very carefully, because their goal, I think, will be to try to prevent conflict or instability in the region.
Barbara, thank you for that. Barbara Plett-Usher there reporting for us. We're going to talk now to Kasia Junaidi from the BBC Persian service, who's in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us. We know what America is thinking. Are you getting any sense of what ordinary Iranians, how they're coping with all of this at the moment?
Well, it's very difficult now to hear from people back home in Iran because of the situation and because of the problems with internet connectivity. But I've heard from some connections inside Tehran that some people have left the capital. The road from Tehran to the northern provinces on the Caspian coast, where usually people would travel, is very busy with traffic. Many people are apparently leaving Tehran for those cities. There were pictures on social media, video films on social media showing some people on streets in Tehran being joyous and even dancing. I have to say that parts of the opposition, many of those people who went on the streets in January in opposition to the regime, they were expecting this attack, since President Trump had warned the Iranian regime about crushing the protests. So some people are showing their joy from these attacks. At the same time, there were reports last night about long queues, people forming long queues in front of petrol stations in anticipation of an imminent attack. Of course, they were waiting for this attack for a while, and some people were showing frustration and exhaustion with waiting for to see how the situation evolves. So in Tehran and major cities around the country, people were expecting this to happen. People were getting ready by buying like food and storing food and water in order, if that something happens, they could have at least to some basic needs. Also, the Iranian TV has been reporting widely on the attacks, especially on an alleged attack hitting a school in Minab in southern Iran, where the government says plus 80 students have been killed in the attack. This is Saturday, but Saturday is a working day in Iran. Most schools were operating. Of course, further confirmation, verification of the reports coming out of Iran are required. But one point to be mentioned is that the school is a school that belonged to the IRGC's Navy, and it was very close to some military compound in Minab.
All right, we'll end it there. Kasia, thank you so much for that. And Bent and Hugo and Barbara Plett-Usher as well. Thanks for your thoughts on all of this. It's quiet now here. The air raid sirens have stopped. As I say, they've been going on throughout the day, and periodically we've had to run down to the shelter in the basement of our live position here. But every now and again you see the fire from the anti-missile batteries, the Iron Dome shield that the Israelis have here, trying to deal with any incoming missiles and drones being fired way off from Iran. We're going to get a final word now from our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who joins me. First of all, Lise, the suggestion that this whole thing began with an attempt on the life of the supreme leader and the upper echelons of the regime in Iran, the suggestion is that those military strikes weren't successful, perhaps, in taking out the top leaders.
We are still only getting very unconfirmed reports, Clive. We're not sure. What we do know is we are getting reports that Israel is not just going after military targets now, that they are going after senior political and military officials in the Iranian order. There are some reports that senior people have been killed. There's a lot of questions being asked about where is the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. We heard some time
ago. Peace and quiet. Iran is playing the FIFA World Cup this summer. The world hopefully will be loving and sharing and together as one again.
Great message from Zach, from one of our members. Praying for peace and quiet. Iran is playing in FIFA World Cup this summer. The world hopefully will be loving and sharing together as one again. Great message, Zach.
Waiting for that. There had been reports.
We all want peace. We don't want war.
As far as he knows, and this was some hours
it's awful.
ago,
it's awful that people will be losing lives. Obviously, the innocent civilians, the innocent people will take the biggest toll on this war.
First of all, the United States has joined immediately, and also they are making it absolutely clear this is not just about exerting more pressure for Iran to come to an agreement on its nuclear program. This is very much that the end goal is the end of the regime as they see it.
Indeed, certainly from the American perspective and from what Donald Trump has been saying, the aim is to bring about an uprising within the Iranian people. You were there very recently. Is there any real likelihood of that, do you think?
Well, what President Trump said in his remarks this morning, first of all, he said to the Iranian people, he said, stay in your homes, seek shelter while the bombs are dropping. But when we are finished our military operations, he says, then you should take this opportunity. It will be your only opportunity in generations to seize the institutions. I think historians would say that when you meet military force and fervor on the streets, that this can unfold in unpredictable multiple ways. What I can say is, having been in Iran this month, I was really struck that for the first time ever since I've been going to Iran for many years, that people did say to me that we now feel that our only chance is to change the order, substantial change. We have to look to external support. We want there to be a military strike. But yet others were very anxious. Iranians are under a whole range of pressures these days, with the soaring inflation, the collapse of the currency, water and electricity shortages, all of these uncertainties. They were anxious about the prospect of another war in their streets. We were in Tehran, where people had survived what had happened last year, so they knew what they could possibly be facing. Iran very much is at a crossroads, and we really felt when we were there that it is pulling in different directions, and with so many people there is a profound sense that something has to change.
Okay, Lise, thank you. Lise Doucet, our chief international correspondent. Katrina.
Thanks, Clive. Well, just some breaking bits of news to bring from you here in the US. There will be an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. That is going to happen at 4 p.m. Eastern here in the US, 9 p.m. in the UK. So while it seems that we may not hear directly from President Trump himself today, we are expecting that the US ambassador to the UN, Mike Walls, will attend that emergency meeting in some capacity, whether in person or virtual is unclear at this point. So we will hear something from the administration at that point. Also to say that the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has posted on X. This is the first kind of official statement we've had from the administration since President Trump posted that 8-minute video overnight. And she says in her post, I'll just read it to you, President Trump monitored the situation overnight at Mar-a-Lago alongside members of his national security team. The president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu by phone. Prior to the attacks, Secretary Rubio called all members of the Gang of Eight to provide congressional notification, and he was able to reach and brief 7 of the 8 members. Just to explain what the Gang of Eight is, it's a sort of colloquial term for the leadership on Capitol Hill here. So it's the leaders of the Republican and Democratic Party, both in the Senate and in the House, and the leaders, the chairpersons, and essentially the deputy chairperson, the ranking members of the intelligence community. So they were all briefed. And Caroline Leavitt continues, the president and his national security team will continue to closely monitor the situation throughout the day. So if we hear anything more from the administration, we will update on that. I want to go now to someone who may be able to shed a little light for us on President Trump's thinking, which is Matthew Bartlett. He's a Republican strategist, and he worked at the US State Department during President Trump's first term in office. Matthew, thanks for joining us here on BBC News. There were talks during the week. We were expecting Secretary of State Marco Rubio to go to Israel on Monday. The talks seem to be making some progress. The Omani mediator reporting progress was on the brink of happening. What happened in the early hours of this morning?
Good morning. And yes, this is certainly a busy morning here in Washington, around the world, trying to look back in the rearview mirror, as well as looking ahead through the windshield as to what this is, this operation, and how we got here. As you said, President Trump tried to initiate positive, has a preferred result with Iran, which is a non-nuclear state, which is dealing with their ballistics program, their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, as well as internal human rights. Just like in January or just like in last year, it seems as if the Iranians were not willing to bend in those talks. And now, after a 10-day stated period, the president, in coordination with Israel, has taken kinetic action here.
Right, let's abandon this for now. We will focus on, I'll bring you a message from President Donald Trump. He addressed this morning. You are watching Martyn Lucas Investor. We are monitoring market reaction. I'm trying to get as much data for you as we can get. Allegedly, Iran launched their Fatah hypersonic missiles in retaliatory. You can see some evidence. This is not confirmed. This has not been confirmed, but we can see some videos on social media from the ground, obviously. I'll now bring on Donald Trump with his address to the nation as of this morning or last night or overnight. This is what he says about the war, the strike on Iran.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again, they can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their Navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that, with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or, in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
That was President Donald Trump with his address to the nation and to his urge to Iranians to take back what belongs to them. We are covering, those who just joined, I can see more and more people coming in. Thank you for joining. We are live covering the United States war on with Iran and United States and allies war with Iran. We are covering the market reaction live. You can see Ethereum on the screen right now. You can see XRP, which is going down, and you can see Bitcoin, which is holding. XRP currently going slightly down. We will track this. We've got more feed to look at. I would like to show you. I could see some mentions about airspace, as well. We can see that the airspace is completely clear over Iran and the vicinity of Iran. You can see no aircraft apart from the military, which obviously you cannot track for obvious reasons. We are covering live feed. Let me see what we've got from other news outlets. We've got Sky News. Let's see what Sky News are saying.
Further. But at the same time, yes, very much. This is an attack on the negotiation table, and this is a replicate of what we saw in June. In the June war, just less than a year ago, it was also in the middle of negotiations. A round of negotiations were scheduled in Oman when the attacks came, the Israeli attacks, and then followed by the U.S. attacks. So this time around, essentially, we were hearing from the Iranians that they are coming to the negotiations, but with their finger on the trigger, assuming they're going to get attacked again. And it did happen.
Nigar, I'd like to shift focus.
Okay, allegedly the Iranian leader has been killed, but it's not confirmed yet. I've got also a bit of update here. Iran didn't hold back their retaliation. Allegedly, they have set off their hypersonic missiles, but it's not confirmed yet. It was only announced by the Iranian national TV. I've got retaliation here. Iran missiles hit United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Al Dhafra Air Base, Qatar, Al Udeid Air Base, Kuwait, Ali Al Salem Air Base, Bahrain, United States 5th Fleet Air Base, Jordan missiles got intercepted over airspace. We've got Israel missiles fired, many intercepted. You could hear previously that there are air raid sirens in Israel.
Devices, so there's communication
kicking off right now. We can see the map here. So you can see it was getting very intense. Now we are waiting for more updates. We are monitoring the situation. Let's turn back to Sky News. We are also monitoring the markets. Currently, most of the markets are closed. What we can cover and monitor is the crypto market, which is open over the weekend. I'm trying to gather more data and more indices to you as well. In the meantime, definitely hit the like button if you are new to this, subscribe, because we are covering major events and their market reaction on this channel pretty much daily. So you can see Bitcoin slight recovery, currently sitting just below $65,000. XRP seems to be dipping slightly, and Ethereum holding just below $1,900. Let's get back to Sky News and let's see what they have to offer.
National Affairs Editor Dominic Waghorn and our Security and Defence Analyst Professor Michael Clark. And Dom, that really does sum it up. We can look at this through the geopolitical lens and the legitimacy of the action by the US and Israel, but also you can't forget the impact on people and the people they love and civilians in Iran as well, who will be fearing for their lives right now.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we are talking to lots of analysts. They can speak in fairly dry terms. It was great to hear from her, you know, on a human level, how it's affecting her and her family. And I think, you know, it's a danger with all these things to kind of look at the video of things going bang and fireworks going off and forgetting that this is affecting millions of people who are tonight going to be terrified that these missiles, these drones, whether you're in Iran or Doha or Bahrain or whatever, could fly in. You know, a lot of these places don't have shelters. In Israel, every home has to have a shelter. So there are places to go if you're in a country that is routinely facing the threat of hostile activity. You know, places in the Gulf, that's not the case. So terrifying for them. And in Tehran, I've just been WhatsApping with a contact in Tehran, checking he's OK. And he said, yes, OK at the moment, but it's going to be a long night. And it is going to be a long night for literally tens or hundreds of millions of people across the region, because this region's been tipped into a war now by the Israelis and the Americans. Donald Trump really just rolling the dice again to see how this works out, without any justification in terms of sort of legality, in terms of not going to the UN Security Council, not asking for or presenting a pretext for carrying this out, not even getting congressional approval. You know, if he'd waited till Monday, there was a resolution on the books in the US Congress that would have made this impossible. He would have to require congressional approval. So he's using this narrow window of opportunity to unleash this war, and it's hard to see exactly what the strategy is and why it's going to be worth it.
A long night ahead, Dom says.
I'm just checking Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance. Nobody is bringing you any updates. They are just
from a military point
broadcasting
of view,
interviews
and
so
the first stage is suppression of the air defence, it's known as SIAD in the trade, to, as it were, make Iran vulnerable to whatever.
And what's the word? Sorry, I've lost the word. They are just broadcasting interviews and other content. So we are exclusively covering the financial side. We are exclusively covering the markets and the market reaction. So thank you for joining me. If you have any more news updates, just send it in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat as well. If you want me to cover anything explicitly, let me know in the chat. We can focus on certain topics and certain indices as well.
Can be made to look like that objective for Donald Trump. So it's going to take some time, which means that the United States is probably going to have to reinforce what it's got. There's information today, this afternoon, that more tankers are on their way from the continental United States. You can see reinforcements coming in, because now that they've started it, And the American military may not have thought that they were going to pull every lever all at once, but now that they have, then it may well be that they'll need more stuff in the region, not least ammunition. There is some concern in the Pentagon that they don't have enough anti-aircraft ammunition, Patriot missiles, for instance, and other forms of anti-aircraft ordnance, because if the Iranians are able to keep up a sort of bombardment, and the Iranians are going to fire off everything they've got, because if they don't use it, they'll lose it, and it may well be that the Americans might struggle a little bit getting enough ammunition in place in time.
When it comes to what Iran is firing off, how discriminating are they? Because we're seeing pictures from the likes of Dubai, and apparently hotels, well, not necessarily being hit direct by the missiles, but certainly those missiles being destroyed and causing damage and injury beneath them.
And that's the point. When a missile is destroyed, it's got to fall somewhere. I mean, it can be knocked off course, it can have its fins knocked out, or it can be fragmented in the air. But the warhead, which may or may not go off, very often it doesn't go off, but the bits are going to fall somewhere. And so always with anti-aircraft operations, there is always debris and damage on the ground, and very often fatalities caused by it. And the Iranians are hitting out wherever they can. And the next thing we would expect to see is the Iranians maybe trying to operate in the Gulf toward the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Americans, of course, have been thinking about that, and they've got a very powerful naval force in the area. But the Iranians have got a lot of small craft, they've got boats, they've got their sort of improvised aircraft carrier, which carries drones and helicopters, and they may well try to use that in order to create a certain amount of chaos in the Gulf. They don't have to close the Gulf to have, or the Strait of Hormuz, to have an economic impact, because once they make it dangerous, then world shipping will have to keep away, which they will. And so, in a sense, the effect on the oil price by tomorrow, the effect on Gulf shipping by tomorrow might be quite considerable. And that's what the Iranians have got to do. They've got to make this look expensive for the United States, expensive for the world community. And if they can fire off enough, they hope they can get lucky.
The IRGC is warning boats not to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, Dom, as it happens. It is interesting, isn't it, seeing that and knowing that both China and Russia want this meeting of the UN Security Council, which is happening at 9 o'clock this evening, GMT, and also knowing full well who takes a lot of that oil that passes through the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. It is China, it is Iran. There are knock-on effects here for all of us, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. You know, this is a waterway through which a fifth of the world's oil passes. Not as much oil as in the past, but it's still a kind of jugular for the global economy. So if you shut that,
it goes to China. That's the key point, isn't it?
Right, exactly. And India, I should have said, not Iran. It goes to India.
All the tankers turn left out of the Gulf. They used to turn right. They all turn left now.
But if it's blocked, and as you say, the IRGC are saying it's going to be blocked, they can't block it for long, but if you see...
I can now see on social media it's been shared a lot that the Burj Khalifa has been struck in Dubai. That is fake news. That is fake news. That's not Burj Khalifa. That's somewhere nearby. That is not Burj Khalifa being struck. Just if you can see this on the social media, that is fake news. That is twisted and not true.
War going back in June last year, the Americans said we're not going to go for the Ayatollah, and the Iranians responded in a more measured way. The Israelis made it pretty clear now that the Ayatollah has been a target. His fate is still unknown. And the Iranians now are fighting, well, the regime is fighting for its life, which means it's going to use all the missiles it's got at its disposal. It's going to use asymmetrical warfare. It may try and close the straits for as long as possible. It could also use sleeper cells it's got, and also its proxies, Hezbollah have in cities around the world to carry out terrorist attacks on Americans or Israelis or other nationals around the world. So, what we're seeing at the moment is an aerial exchange of fire across the Gulf and across with Israel as well. But this could metastasise fairly quickly into a different war. And as you've been saying all day, Michael, wars don't sort of carry on in the way you predict. So, however this war was sort of begun in the mind of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, it will change the longer it goes on. And we're looking at a lot of countries potentially involved.
On that point, you talk about cells, proxies, the IRGC operating in cities around the world, and we hear in the UK. Is that why you hear our Prime Minister Keir Starmer being clear that Britain played no part in this militarily? Is it sort of trying to say, look, nothing to do with us, guys, but we also agree with our allies in terms of Iran being a risk?
Well, I think, Michael, you can talk about sort of the military justification, but I think diplomatically and politically, there's a huge amount of disquiet about this. As I say, it's not been... You know, you go back to the Gulf War, George Bush and Tony Blair bent over backwards to try and get their invasion of Iraq and other, you know, military activities and operations then justified in the international arena, and they wanted to have UN security support for it. You know, Donald Trump is
yes, the missile landed near Fairmont Hotel near the Palm. Thank you, Lee Ramsey, for the update. We also have multiple messages that Iran have been shooting their hypersonic missiles, their peak military instrument. This is not been confirmed yet. This has not been confirmed. It's only been announced by the Iranian outlets and agencies. We are tracking this update more. I've got ABC News now. Let's see, we've got some more story, some more update. Let's switch over to another media outlet. We are monitoring the market's reaction as well. As I said, Bloomberg, Wall Street, they are just broadcasting, Wall Street Journal, all media, all market media, they are just broadcasting podcasts, interviews. They are not covering this live. So we are here bringing you the live reaction of the market.
You can't just say to a population,
we are monitoring multiple sources of media. Let's switch over to American outlets.
Hitting the street who want change, those opposition leaders. But I have been there enough to know there are millions and millions of hardliners in that country that do not want change. And will there be clashes between those two factions? That is also something to watch. But I know that the Israelis have had...
This is the live price of Bitcoin currently holding up. We have XRP, which has now recovered from that little dip, currently sitting at $1.32. Bitcoin just above 65,000. Ethereum pushed slightly over the $1,900 mark. What you can see are 5-minute candles, so I think that's the best representation of the current market. All indices are now closed, whether it's commodities, whether it's ETFs, whether it's commodities, stock. All markets are closed now, so pretty much the only thing we can cover live is the crypto market, but it can give us good feel and good sentiment of what's coming.
They waited till he got there. They sent in a tiny drone to make sure it was the Hamas leader, and once they did that, they remotely controlled a bomb and killed him. So those are the kinds of things the Israelis have been able to do over the years. Whether they were successful in trying to target and take out the regime, we'll have to see. But that is key to what happens here, key to how this ends.
And Martha, just to emphasize the significance of all of this, too, you talked about the Israelis, but also the Americans. I mean, Nicolas Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, is just over the river in Brooklyn right now in jail. Taken out, extracted by the U.S. military. Just the shift in strategy to the significance of if we actually targeted and took out the Ayatollah and president of Iran, the ramifications and the implications of what this really could mean.
This was, first of all, let's go back to Venezuela for a second. That was an extraordinary mission, and for President Trump, a very successful mission. But
right, we'll move over to different outlet. They are doing some deep analysis. Let's have a look at BBC, what BBC is bringing now.
Our forces
to this war was not started by Iran. It was imposed on us.
Oh, this is interesting. The spokesperson, Foreign Ministry of Iran.
That we are not attacking any country in the region. We have no problem, no issue with our Arab neighbors. The only thing we are doing is to conduct an act of self-defense against those bases which are being used by the United States to attack Iran. In a way, the United States is abusing the territory of the Arab countries of the region in order to launch an act of aggression against Iran. And this is in violation of basic principles of international law.
President Trump, in his first comments this morning, said he tried to do a deal with you. He said that you didn't. He said he tried, but you didn't want to come to a deal. Do you now realize that you weren't moving quickly enough in offering the kind of compromises which could have averted this military action which is now unfolding?
You know, this is just a way of normalizing their act of aggression. This is an excuse. Everyone knows, including the Omani mediator, that the negotiations were moving in a good direction. Even the American negotiators acknowledged the fact that the negotiations were quite progressing. That's why they agreed to have a technical round of discussion in Vienna to be hosted by IAEA Secretary, Director General. So talking about not moving forward with respect to diplomatic process is simply not true. It's false. And I think nowadays everyone can understand fully that it was a sort of deception. They were not serious about diplomatic process and diplomatic achievement from day one. And this is simply a reminder of what they did in June. You remember that we were supposed to meet for the 6th round, but just 2 days before that, they attacked Iran.
And one last question, Ismail Baghai. Britain, Germany and France have called for the resumption of negotiations, but seeing what's happening
Bitcoin
now
price
in the
live.
region, it seems as though the time for talking is
XRP.
over. Is it?
Ethereum.
What we are focusing right now is to defend our people, to defend our territory, to defend our national security. And I think this is what, for the time being, we have to focus.
But is it over? Diplomacy has ended?
As I told you, you know,
what are you hearing?
We have had very bad experiences of diplomacy. I mean, they turned diplomacy into a sort of trap for attacking Iran. So they are not serious about diplomacy. And everyone knows now, in the region and internationally, that the United States diplomacy cannot be trusted at all.
They made it clear it's about regime change now for President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Is that what you understand?
That's simply an illusion that on the international law, of course, everyone should condemn these rhetorics because this is against the right of self-determination of people. This is an act of aggression. This is against the principle of non-intervention in the domestic affairs of a state. And for Iranians, by the way, it is a reminiscent of 1953 coup d'etat, which is still an old wound. And by this attack, the Americans simply reminded every Iranian that the history of animosity, the history of hostility by the United States administration goes back to 70 years ago.
Ismail Baghai, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson of Tehran, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News.
Thank you.
Wow, that was interesting. I've got some more update from Sensei. Apparently from Financial Times, breaking news, insurers to cancel policies and raise prices for ships in Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. So that will definitely be impacting oil prices. Again, more footage from alleged use of the hypersonic missiles shot by Iran. This has not been confirmed, but we have more and more footage coming through. We are tracking the markets. Currently, we can only track the crypto market, but this will give us good gauge on how the markets are accepting this news and what's unfolding. Bitcoin slightly rises, XRP holding, and Ethereum slightly rising as well. I've got more footage to bring you. Stay where you are. Don't go anywhere. You are watching Martyn Lucas Investor. I'm Vaz, and I'm covering currently what is unfolding in the Mid-East. Martyn will follow after me. We'll be covering this event all day. If you haven't done it yet, hit the like button. Definitely, we want to come out because we want to come out to everyone. If we had 100 likes, YouTube will start promoting. No financial channels are covering this. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, more Financial Times, Yahoo Finance, they are just broadcasting interviews and podcasts. Nobody is covering this live. So if you hit the like button, we can reach out to more people and you can have conversation in the chat as well. And you can find out, we can have a chat, what we think of this. We can find out the investor sentiment on this as well. So we are now covering, let's go through another outlet. Let's go to CBC News. What story we've got here?
Hello everyone, I'm Natasha Fatah and you're watching CBC News Network. And we have special extended coverage for you today of the military assault on Iran. The US and Israel have launched multiple strikes on the country, with the US President Donald Trump pledging to eliminate Iran's nuclear program and devastate its military. A critical moment that will potentially reshape the region and profoundly affect the people of Iran. Large explosions rocked the capital of Tehran, where smoke, as you can see, was seen rising from that district, which also includes the presidential palace. Now, at this point, it's not altogether clear if Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was in his offices when the attacks occurred. In the meantime, scenes on the ground show chaos in the streets as Iranians rush to seek shelter, find their loved ones, or just flee the cities completely. And as predicted, in response, Iran's Revolutionary Guard says all U.S. bases, resources, and interests in the region are now considered legitimate targets. It says it has struck Israeli and U.S. bases with missiles, and its retaliatory operation will continue until its enemy was, quote, decisively defeated. Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan all say they are intercepting missiles fired from Iran. The scale of the damage across the region and the number of casualties still remain completely unclear in these early hours. And the first news of today's assault came directly from the U.S. President Donald Trump, who posted an 8-minute-long video on Truth Social. In it, he called on the Iranian public to seize control of their destiny and added, the lives of courageous American heroes may be lost. Here is part of that video.
We warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated.
That, of course, is U.S. President Donald Trump announcing on Truth Social today's assault on Iran, an operation the Pentagon has named Epic Fury. Now, this attack marks the second time the U.S. has carried out strikes on Iran since President Trump returned to the White House just last year. And the first was in June of last year when it conducted a series of attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. So let's get a better sense of what's going on in the region, in the Middle East. We turn to Crystal Gamansing, who is live for us in Jerusalem. Crystal, thank you for being here. I know it's been a long day with lots of information coming at you quickly. At this stage, what do we know?
Well, Natasha, right now, Jerusalem is covered by an air raid alert that was sent out to mobile phones, and the community sirens went off not too long ago. The same situation in Tel Aviv. We are also getting some information from Israel Defense Forces, that information being posted on their official Telegram page. That is where they are sharing a lot of details tonight. They are saying that the IDF has begun an additional wave of strikes targeting Iran's missile launchers and aerial defense systems in central.
We've got some breaking updates. Let me break this up. We've got some breaking updates from Reuters. Kuwaiti hospitals received 12 wounded. State news agency. And we've got 5 minutes ago, just 5 minutes ago, attack on sports hall kills 15 in southern Iranian town of Lamed. State media reports. We also have a few minutes ago, Bahrain says several residential buildings struck in capital. Bahrain's Ministry of Interior said several residential buildings in the capital, Manama, were hit on Saturday. Civil defense continues with firefighting and rescue operations at the affected sites. The ministry said on X it gave no immediate details, no casualties, or the cause of the strikes.
Try and eliminate some of the projectiles that have been launched from Iran. We don't have exact numbers at this point. Local Israeli media say 125 missiles were intercepted before they got to the territory. They are saying 35 were taken down inside the territory. We have heard from Israeli police. They are saying that there has been some property damage in central Israel because of falling debris. So we are hearing again from officials saying to pay attention to those security alert warnings, to stay indoors, because falling debris does play such a deadly role, because it
You are watching Martyn Lucas Investor. We are covering the market reaction to the war in Iran. We are following this closely. We are bringing you live updates. We are watching multiple media and news outlets. Those who just joined, don't forget to hit the like button. If we get more the more likes we get, the more it gets spreaded, because the main financial and market outlets do not inform on this. If you check out Bloomberg, if you check out Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance, they just are broadcasting interviews and podcasts. So we are probably the only channel that's covering this live. Martyn Lucas Investor, I'm Vaz.
Verify that, but they have been doing these strikes throughout the day. And one of the reasons, Natasha, that they did a daytime attack rather than, on a darkness, which is normally when we would see these sort of military operations. They usually do them when it's dark, not daylight at 8 o'clock in the morning, is because Israeli officials say they had information that the Iranian regime was gathering, and so they took advantage of the timing and that information and had those initial strikes during the day. So that is sort of the lay of the land as it sits right now. Again, we are under an alert system here in Jerusalem. Another one also is currently covering the Tel Aviv area.
And Crystal, this is specific just to Israel, but we've been talking all day about the wider implications for the region, and there have been other areas within the Middle East that have been caught in the crossfires, so to speak. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so many Gulf nations, and that is something the Gulf nations were incredibly worried about before these strikes. They were encouraging de-escalation, asking the American officials not to move ahead, to move forward with diplomacy, fearing that they would end up being caught up in these strikes, and that is exactly what has happened. We have seen Jordan, for example, saying that they have shot down ballistic missiles earlier in the day. We have some video that's been verified of incoming threats in Bahrain, also in the UAE, in Dubai as well. A number of these locations putting out statements condemning the strikes, condemning the fact that they are being targeted by projectiles coming from Iran. We have also heard from Iranian officials. The letter was sent to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying that all Israeli sites and American sites, including American bases right across the Gulf, would be legitimate targets. And they say they will continue to target those sites until there is a complete and total ceasefire, Natasha.
Let's talk about the Iranian proxies. There are so many. They have been warned not to get involved when military action is still being talked about. So any indication about whether they're heeding that warning, if we're going to see more action coming from them?
Yeah, that is a really interesting point here, Natasha, because we know that Iran often uses its proxies when it comes to strikes in Israel and the surrounding areas. Israel had issued a warning to Hezbollah in Lebanon not to get involved. There was a statement this evening from the leadership of Hezbollah saying that they are expressing solidarity with Iran. There's no indication at this point that they are going to get involved. However, a part of that statement also said that they are confident Israel and the American enemy will suffer major blows. We have not heard anything from the Houthis in Yemen. That is a group that has been very active of late, not recently, but of late, targeting ships in the Red Sea. That could potentially be something.
Got some breaking news. Israeli army announces new wave of air attacks on Iran. The Israeli army has announced a new wave of attacks against Iran, saying it is striking missiles, launch sites and defense systems in central Iran. So the tension continues, the conflict continues. It's not de-escalating. We also have some update about Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have discussed the United States and Israeli attacks on Iran in a phone call with Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani. This ministry said in a statement. His ministry said in a statement, Lavrov and Sheikh Mohammed called for an end to any military action that would destabilize the region. The statement said there was a general consensus on the end of urgent return to the political and diplomatic process with a view to resolving all issues between the United States, Israel, and Islamic Republic of Iran. And we've got some more updates. Kuwait reports injuries but no deaths from Iranian attacks. The country Ministry of Health says that 12 people were injured amid regional developments, but that all cases are under medical control. 3 members of the armed forces were injured by falling shrapnel at Ali al-Salim Air Base, it added. Kuwait's defense ministry said earlier that Ali al-Salim Air Base came under attack by a number of ballistic missiles. We covered this, we brought you this little update as soon as it came out. Iran retaliation, United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Al Dhafra Air Base. We brought you some strikes from Dubai as well. Qatar Al Udeid Air Base, Kuwait, Ali Al Salem Air Base, Bahrain, United States 5th Fleet Air Base, Jordan intercepted over airspace, missiles intercepted, and Israel missiles fired, many intercepted. And you can see the map here of Iran retaliation. There are some casualties, but definitely not in Qatar. We are following the market reaction. Let's have a look what the markets are doing. I mean, what crypto is doing. That's probably the only commodity we can track for you right now, because all the markets are closed, futures are closed, indices, commodities are closed. Bitcoin sitting just above $65,000, XRP now going sideways, $1.32, and Ethereum just above $1,900. Let's check more news if we have any more updates. We are tracking all the news for you. We are tracking all the updates. None of the financial outlets are covering this. That's awful. That is awful. We are probably the only channel covering this live for you. Do we have any more news from here? No. Let me just check multiple sources. We've got allegedly Iran launched Fatah hypersonic missiles. This has not been confirmed. There's more footage in here. Let's see what the other outlets are giving us. Right, we've got more analysis from Sky News.
They've probably got about 2,000 missiles, something of that sort, and they're certainly in a position where they will want to use them all quickly, because if they don't use them, they will lose them, on the assumption that the Israelis probably have a pretty good idea where they are, and they will get bombed if the Iranians don't use them. So we know already that they've hit the airbase in Kuwait. They've hit or attacked anyway, the headquarters of the US Fifth Fleet at Jaffa in Bahrain. Interestingly, that's also an American and British base in Bahrain. We used to have 4 minesweepers there, mine countermeasure vessels. There's only one left there now, HMS Middleton, which is due to be withdrawn. It's probably still there.
I'll be back in a few seconds. I just need to get some water.
Early March. So there's not much left in British terms in Al Jaffa. But more importantly, the Al Udeid Air Base, very big air base, the Americans are there in very high numbers. That's the CENTCOM, Central Command Headquarters. Britain also has a presence in Al Udeid. And then the Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. So those air bases have certainly been targeted, and I'm sure there will be other targets. Meanwhile, the Iranians talk about the Strait of Hormuz, of blocking the Strait of Hormuz, or at least making it economically unviable. And remember, they don't have to block it to make ships stay away. They only have to make it dangerous, potentially dangerous, for ships to go there. And from now on, I think we can regard the Strait of Hormuz as difficult, if not closed. We'll see in the next day or so how that works out. Undoubtedly, given that we've got a war on our hands, the outcome of any war is very uncertain. This is the first 24 hours of it. And here are the sort of thing that is liable to happen. This is the Al Jaffa base. There may be more of this. This is an attack on the naval base. We can expect there to be more, and it will have unexpected consequences, non-anticipated consequences. Ultimately, all wars create very messy political situations. Now, this may turn out to be a short war, or it may turn out to be a war that lasts many days and even weeks, and perhaps even months. Even if it is successful from the point of view of Israel and the United States, the outcome is likely to be messy. And a messy outcome in a country as big as Iran, 90 million people, with a very strong sense of the revolution amongst at least 10% of those 90 million people, as is estimated. It's not that the government is universally unpopular throughout Iran. It's generally unpopular, very unpopular. But there's a core of people who believe in it. And there is the IRGC, the Republican Guard, the Revolutionary Guard, and the Bajij, who are the militia, who are prepared to enforce it. So this regime will not go willingly, it'll not go easily, and it is determined to try to survive. So the messy outcome that we can anticipate, we don't know how it will turn out, but it will be messy, almost certainly will extend in some way across the whole region.
Michael, many thanks. Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone in Washington for us. Hi, Mark. How much of a concern is it then that this could go on for weeks?
A huge concern. I mean, I think we should state that this is a stunning development by the American president. And from an American perspective, it is not as though he has been preparing the American people for what has unfolded over the last 12 hours. Yes, he's been talking the talk of war as he gets onto the helicopter, and a little bit of it in the State of the Union address earlier this week. But he has not stated in clear terms in a forum like the State of the Union, which was the opportunity for him to do that, precisely why he thinks that this is the right course of action. And that's why we saw this statement overnight, a pre-recorded statement, where he did appear to, at the very last minute, state the case, not just for a short war, not a quick in and out, one and done, like Venezuela was, but potentially a sustained conflict. And one part of that really struck me as extraordinary. He said in that statement, the lives of courageous American heroes may be lost and we may have casualties. And he went on to say that often happens in war war, but we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission. That is an American president preparing his nation for war, but he has done it only after he pressed the button on that war. On top of that, there has been no congressional approval. Yes, he called in the so-called Gang of Eight over the course of the past couple of days. That is politicians on Capitol Hill who are on key intelligence and defense committees. He called them in for a briefing. But Congress hasn't had a say in all of this. So I think the key question, which Michael got to a bit there, which is really, really relevant when we look at the American context here, is how long this goes on for. If it's really quick, if miraculously the regime falls and there is a sort of organic turnover and everything's fine by Tuesday next week, then, well, he's got away with it. And it will be seen among his base and among the right here in America as a sort of booyah American moment. Look what American strength can do. But there is a big difference between regime change, which comes with a plan when you know what's going after, and regime collapse, which I think is what we may well see here. And if we get regime collapse and chaos that draws in America further, creates complete chaos in the region and potentially beyond, well, then that will be a massive, massive problem for President Trump. So, look, some will see him as a masterful risk taker, and his ability for risk is absolutely extraordinary, who is seizing a moment, seizing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create regime change in Iran. Some will see that. Others will see him as a fundamentally reckless gambler.
OK, Mark in Washington, many thanks. Well, we can bring in our security and defence editor next, Deborah Haynes. Deborah, let's talk about the UK involvement and possible impacts here. It's a war a long way away, of course, but that doesn't mean we won't feel the effects here.
Well, yes. I mean, I guess just in a daily life front, whenever there is war, it has repercussions for the rest of the world, and in particular, war in that region. There are multiple reports about warnings being given to shipping companies about the Strait of Hormuz, that vital shipping lane that transits so much of global produce and energy, and how ships there are being warned about insurance risk should they be using that area, because obviously Iran is now under attack and lashing back, and it has previously warned that it would close that Strait of Hormuz should America attack it. So that is clearly going to be something that if that happens, it will have huge ramifications economically for the world economy, including for people here in the UK. And then there is, of course, the British military side of things. The UK has multiple interests in the region, but at the moment, the Prime Minister has gone out of his way to stress that the UK has not played a role in this military action by the US and Israel. He's talked about how the UK has been bolstering its defences in the region, but really it does belie the lack of capability that the UK has to be able to deal with the principal threat here from Iran, which is ballistic and cruise missiles. The UK only has Type 45 destroyers, which are capable of defending against incoming ballistic missiles. But as of now, in terms of what we've been told, the only assets that have been moved forward in terms of bolstering our defences in places like the RAF base in Cyprus and also assets in the Gulf is 6 F-35 jets. Yes, very sophisticated. Yes, could shoot down drones and maybe cruise missiles, but not ballistic missiles. They've gone to Cyprus. And then Typhoon jets, again, capable of air defence, but not ballistic missile air defence. They've been moved forward to Qatar. And so while the Prime Minister is talking about jets in the skies, it really feels a bit more symbolic at the moment in terms of our actual capability to be able to play a part if Iran goes even further in its response. And I think one other thing to point out in terms of how this has played out today you've had this overwhelming military strikes, multiple strikes ongoing by the US and Israel, targeting multiple sites across Iran. You've seen the impact of that. In retaliation, though, the Iranians have lashed out at Gulf countries in that region, and therefore really creating further hostilities towards them by other Gulf countries. You've seen statements from countries like Saudi Arabia condemning the Iranian strikes, saying that how unlawful they are to attack a country like, or to launch strikes against countries that, yes, maybe they have US assets there, but they have not been involved directly in attacking Iran. So it really gives a sense of the limited options, actually, that Iran has coming up against this significant American firepower. But clearly, as you've been hearing all day, there is, of course, the potential for Iran to get what, you know, a lucky strike on its, as it would see it, and cause significant harm to one of the American warships, bases, other assets in the region. And that would, of course, then escalate the risk that Donald Trump has taken by launching this military offensive.
OK, Deborah, for now, thank you very much. Well, reaction from the UK next. Sir Keir Starmer spoke earlier from Downing Street about the US attack on Iran. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
I condemn Iran's attacks today on partners across the region, many of which are not parties to this conflict. We extend our support and solidarity to them as part of our commitments to the security of our allies in the Middle East. We have a range of defensive capabilities in the region, which we've recently strengthened. Our forces are active, and British planes are in the sky today as part of coordinated regional defensive operations to protect our people, our interests, and our allies, as Britain has done before, in line with international law. We've stepped up protections for British bases and personnel to their highest level.
Let's go to Downing Street, join political correspondent Amanda Acas. Quite tricky, isn't it, for the UK and other allies of the US? Because on the one hand, they want to end Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Okay, we have more
but at the same
updates.
time,
United States tell Lebanon, Israel will not escalate attacks on country. Lebanon state-run national news agency report that Lebanon's presidency says President Joseph Aoun received assurances from US Ambassador Michael Issa that Israel would not step up its already frequent attacks on Lebanon as long as there are no hostile acts towards Israel from Lebanese territory. Lebanon's Hezbollah has condemned US-Israeli attacks on its close ally Iran, but has not commented on whether or not it will enter the conflict with attacks on Israel or US military positions in the region. We are following the markets. We are probably the only media outlet that is following the markets. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Yahoo Finance, nobody is covering the market reaction. Currently, probably the only indices we can cover is the crypto market. We can see it's digesting it fairly well for now. We are tracking multiple media sources for you. Let's have a look. We've got Fox News. Let's see what is going on Fox News.
Witnesses heard sirens and explosions in Kuwait, which is home to U.S. Army Central. Explosions could also be heard in Qatar. Now, Saudi Arabia said on state-run media that it had repelled attacks by Iran on its capital and eastern region. Iraq and the United Arab Emirates closed their airspace, and sirens also sounded in Jordan. We are getting in some reaction here. This one is coming in from Secretary Kristi Noem, now posting to social media. saying, I'm in direct coordination with our federal intelligence and law enforcement partners as we continue to closely monitor and thwart any potential threats to the homeland. Now, we also heard from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. She posted to X a short time ago as well, and I'm not sure if we still have that post that we can get up here. But to reiterate what she had shared as we're working to get that up on your screen, she said President Trump monitored these attacks overnight from Mar-a-Lago, and he is continuing to monitor them today. But this is just coming in from Secretary Noem. All right, so here's that post here from Caroline Leavitt saying President Trump monitored the situation overnight at Mar-a-Lago alongside members of his national security team. The president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu by phone. Prior to the attacks, Secretary Rubio called all members of the Gang of Eight to provide congressional notification, and he was able to reach and brief 7 of those 8 members. The president and his national security team will continue to closely monitor the situation throughout the day. A live look now at the White House, because as I've also been sharing here, we anticipated we were going to get a press conference, but we are now learning we will not be hearing from the Trump administration here today on this. But we do hear from Caroline Leavitt sharing that post, saying that President Trump continues to monitor this situation. Now, I also did want to share with you just a bit more information here, and I do want to head back to that live feed out of Tel Aviv as we continue to watch there. It took over an hour for President Trump to make an official announcement on the U.S. involvement in what he called was a major combat operation. In that 8-minute video on social media, which we will play for you here towards the end of the hour in case you did miss it, President Trump indicated the U.S. was striking for reasons far beyond the nuclear program, listing grievances stretching back to the beginning of the Islamic Republic following a revolution in 1979. All right, if you give me one moment here, it appears we're getting another post in from Fox News. All right, so this is coming in from Fox News. Kash Patel on the left-hand side of your screen. It says, breaking, FBI counterterrorism, counterintelligence teams are on elevated alert nationwide after Iran strikes. That's an FBI official speaking to Fox News' Peter Doocy. Once again, let's read that to you. FBI counterterrorism, counterintelligence teams are on elevated alert nationwide after those Iran strikes. So that is just coming in here from our Fox News team as we continue on our end to search social media to bring you all of these reactions here in real time. At 12:31 here on the East Coast, we are bringing this to you as we head back to this live look out of Tel Aviv. Now, President Trump told Iranians to take cover, but urged them to later rise up and topple the Islamic leadership. He had said that in that social media video. He said, when we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. These attacks came a day after President Trump voiced frustration over lack of progress in negotiations to stop Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons. Israel said it had worked with the U.S. for months to plan these attacks as well. That's some new information we had learned here just a bit earlier. And before U.S.-Iran negotiations were underway in Geneva, the U.S. had assembled a vast fleet of fighter jets and warships in the region to try to pressure Iran into a deal over its nuclear program. And the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and 3 guided missile destroyers arrived in January to bolster the number of warships in the region. The fleet has added more than 10,000 U.S. troops to the region. The fighting disrupted air travel in the region here. Israel and the United Arab Emirates, home to both the long-haul carriers Emirates and Etihad, had closed their airspace today as well. Qatar Airways Group has said it has temporarily canceled flights to and from Doha because Qatari airspace was also closed. Planes en route to Israel were rerouted to other airports as well. So we have been seeing that happening here as well amid these strikes here. What we're going to do is step away for another commercial break. If you are just joining us, I'm your host, Christy Matino. As I've been sharing here, and I just want to give you a behind-the-scenes look, we have several feeds coming in here by the moment. We have a whole team working over here, my producers, as they're sending me this information. So as you're learning it, we're learning it. During this commercial break, I'm going to keep refreshing these feeds, seeing what we can find to bring you. Stay with us.
I'm muted. Thank you. Okay, let's. Thank you for the super chat as well. We are covering the war breaking out in Iran. As I said, the markets, nobody is covering the market reaction. Let's go through it again with the audio now. Bitcoin slightly pushing up, XRP going sideways, Ethereum sort of copying Bitcoin. The markets are digesting this fairly well, but about 15 minutes ago we got unconfirmed information that the Strait of Hormuz is closed now, and Iran is warning all ships from coming through the Strait of Hormuz. That will have massive impact on oil unless this is resolved by Sunday, by the futures opening, and by Monday morning. This can have massive impact on the markets. We are tracking more news. Before I hand you over to Martyn, I'll give you President Trump's speech as well. We are now watching ABC News Live.
Bases, and they've evacuated some personnel from many of those bases in the region. There have been no serious casualties, no serious injuries reported in any of those bases, and that is according to a U.S. official. I know I keep making this point, but sometimes you say there are no casualties and you find out later that there might be traumatic brain injury, and that's from the concussion of those missiles hitting nearby. That can definitely happen. It happened in 2020 in Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq. About 100 people with concussions and traumatic brain injuries. We also have to keep watching because these missiles keep coming. They are headed towards those bases. So we don't know exactly when, where, but they've got those Patriot missile batteries up. They have what's called soft defense. They actually flew some of the aircraft from these bases out of there, and they're in countries that are, in a sense, protecting them. They're not being used in an offensive manner, but they're trying to protect them at certain bases in the region so that the Iranians can't destroy or wipe out a lot of aircraft. In Bahrain, one of those missiles did hit some sort of facility again, but there were no serious injuries reported in any of those places. But you definitely might see in these coming hours and in these coming days, because this retaliation is not over, more injuries or definitely more missiles or drones hitting some of these spots. That is what everybody is worried about. The Iranians clearly
This is literally happening right now as we speak. We've got a few minutes ago, Iran sends new wave of missiles towards Israel. There's a report. This news comes from the US, from Iran's semi-official news agency, Tasmin. So apparently there is another round of retaliation attacks.
Penetrated Iran so many times. I've been there seeing displays that the Iranians
and we are getting a special message from our special guest.
773 tip 20,000 through super chat. Drink Coca-Cola and see Vaslav equals super cool.
You can see that car right
there. Thank you for your message.
Very little of the car damage, but it killed a nuclear scientist. They displayed, it's something the Iranians showed me, a number of cars, a number of places where they'd taken out those Iranian scientists. So the Israelis have done some really remarkable operations inside Tehran. If you remember, after October 7th, and this happened in 2024.
Got more live update, more live news and update. France was not informed in advance of strikes against Iran, Macron says. Macron says that France was neither told in advance nor involved in the strikes against Iran. Our absolute priority is the security of our nationals and of our assets, says Macron, adding that diplomacy must regain the upper hand. Macron was speaking at the start of a meeting of France Defense and National Security Council in Paris to discuss the situation in Iran and the Middle East.
We do not know for certain the condition of them, whether they were untouched, whether they are injured. We've heard various reports, but I'm sure we'll know soon enough. And of course, if they are gone, what happens next.
All right, Martha, for that really interesting insight there, too. And I want to go back to Steve Ganyard. Steve, we've been talking about some of the U.S. assets in the region. I'm just going to tick through this because I want to get your expertise on it. The strikes, we've been told from multiple sources, involve a mix of U.S. aircraft, Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from Navy ships. We mentioned the 2 aircraft carriers there, 30,000 plus troops, and then more on the way. How significant is this attack? Do you expect to see more in the hours ahead, or do you think that the bulk of it is already over?
I think what we're going to see is a phased approach with. They're going to probably spend another day. They probably got lots more targets they need to go after. They'll then step back a little bit and assess. Something to think about here. The president has told the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. Now, the Iranian people are not going to go out in the streets and protest if we're bombing. So at some point, there may be like, okay, we're going to pause for a few hours here. If you want to go protest, show us that you're actually going to be serious about taking this out. But the use of the Tomahawk this is pretty much SOP for the U.S. Military because nobody's flying it. There's no risk to any pilots, any U.S. service personnel. And so it's very effective. It's got a low radar cross-section. It flies at low altitude, but it's been very good at taking out all of the air defenses. So the U.S. has said they've got great luck in taking out the air defenses along with the Israelis in Iran. And so if the U.S. and Israel can control the skies and there's no threat to any U.S. aircraft, then it's just a matter of time until the U.S. is able to beat down the regime to the point where they can either no longer oppress their people or that they can maintain the economy. So I think we'll have at least another day, and then it may go in tranches. This may go on for at least a week or maybe more, but they're going to have to sort of shoot, take a look, assess, and then shoot again. But it's all going to depend on how things work and how the reaction of the Iranian regime plays out in the days to come. One thing to think about, Whit, here. If the U.S. and Israel control the skies over Iran, then it's just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of how many sorties they can put across Iran before they begin to go after economic targets, oil reserves, electricity plants, things that allow the regime to be maintained. So it's just a matter of time once they control the air that the U.S. has the Iranians in a position that they really have no recourse other than to eventually surrender.
Just a matter of time. And we've been in this period a bit of a lull in terms of information flow from the White House. We really haven't heard much from the administration or the president himself for hours now. But we are getting a little bit more from the administration. Let's go back to Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas, because you are hearing from the Department of Homeland Security.
We are, and I think the message that we can get from all of this is that the potential that Iran could do something is something that officials are not discounting. The statement from Homeland Security Secretary Noam reads as follows. Quote, I am in direct coordination with our federal intelligence and law enforcement partners as we continue to monitor and thwart any potential threats to the homeland. So
decent movement on the market, Ethereum going down, XRP on the way down as well, and Bitcoin started pulling a red candle. This could be the news coming through and digesting further development of the market.
For people here at home who are going about their Saturday here and watching this unfold, you know, on the other side of the world, there is still this piece for us Americans on U.S. soil. What is the message to the American people from law enforcement and the administration?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that they want Americans to go on with their daily lives. But that old phrase that we've come to know since 9/11, if you see something, say something, is in full effect. But I think what you're seeing here is the knowledge that Iran has in recent years tried to target dissidents, journalists. There was even, according to the Justice Department, an attempt or a plot developing to attack President Trump. There's a man on trial in New York City as we speak in connection with that particular plot. There's great concern about cybersecurity and the potential that Iran could do some sort of a cyber attack against our infrastructure. And I think the wild card here is that if it is true that the Iranian leadership is in fact being targeted, where the military is being decimated, then it's, you know, for them, there is no reason for restraint, which is something my sources have said for many years, that they would be reluctant to do anything overly dramatic in the United States because the retaliation from the U.S. could take out the regime and kill a lot of people. Well, if they're being targeted, what is their concern for restraint at this point? That is something that U.S. officials are factoring in.
Yeah, as Steve Gandard pointed out, too, is at that moment of desperation for the Iranian regime, and what would they do with their backs against the wall? Pierre Thomas, thanks again. Let's go back to Mary at the White House. Mary, we know that President Trump is at Mar-a-Lago monitoring this.
Wish they will renegotiate. Vietnam loves peace.
No, we haven't.
Thank you for the great message, Kevin.
Announcing this campaign, which he described as massive. And of course, the president, we know he's continually being updated. He is monitoring all of this play out from his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. He's down there with members of his national security team. Of course, the president is president no matter where he is, so he certainly has access to all of the communications and briefings that he would need. We do also know that he did speak overnight with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Of course, it comes just about 2 weeks after Netanyahu was here at the White House. This obviously was top of the discussion that they had.
Got more fake news on in the social media sector. A direct hit on Burj Khalifa in Dubai. That's not happened. This is fake news. Burj Khalifa was not hit.
And of course, when you remember the big picture here, I mean, this is a hugely consequential and pivotal moment for this president. He campaigned on a promise not to drag America into more prolonged foreign conflicts. And when he was asked just yesterday if he was concerned that any strikes on Iran would lead to that kind of lengthy conflict that he promised voters he would avoid, the president said there's always a risk. The vice president, J.D. Vance, has said there's no chance of a years-long war, but there are still very large, very sort of fundamental questions about what this looks like going forward, in addition to why the president decided to launch these strikes now.
Yeah, sure are those fundamental questions, and I do expect we probably will see more from the president at some point today. As we saw with Operation Midnight Hammer, they came out with his chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and they really laid out piece by piece exactly what happened once that information was reportable and confirmed. So we will stand by for that and bring it to you as soon as we get it. Mary, thanks again. Let's go back to Ian Pannell in Tel Aviv. Ian's been hunkered down in that shelter there. But Ian, I just want to get some historical perspective, because we've seen presidential administration.
We are covering market reaction to the tension or the escalation of the conflict in Iran. Bitcoin currently sitting above $65,000. XRP has started slightly going up, and Ethereum has recovered from the previous crash. Let's bring up another source of information who we've got here. We are covering this live for you. No major or no media outlet focused on finance is covering this. No financial channel is covering this. We are bringing you this exclusively. Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, Wall Street Journal, they are replaying their old content, and they are not bringing any new perspective to this. We are covering, let me just check this for you. Right, we've got BBC, quite interesting segment.
To all of this, they have got close involvement in a lot of the economy, and this is why every time there is an uprising in Iran, 2009, 2019, 2022 with the Mahsa Amini protests, everyone always says, is this it? Is this the big one? Is this the moment at which the regime falls? And the reason it doesn't is that we have never yet seen a significant number of the security forces, who are huge in number, coming over to the side of the protesters, or at the very least laying down their weapons and saying, I'm not going to shoot my fellow Iranians. That hasn't happened yet. Despite expectations that it was going to in January, it didn't happen. May happen this time, but if it doesn't, I think the regime will survive.
Just very quickly, I've only got about 30 seconds left, but there is a succession plan, and they've stepped up the succession plan in recent weeks, anticipating this attack.
It is not publicly available, so we're not sure exactly what it is. The other thing we should mention is that there is a precedent in Iran.
Yeah.
And so Masoud Pezeshkian, which people may have heard of and think, oh, maybe he's powerful, but he's in the Iranian setup, he's not. He is elected in a way, of course, that the supreme leader is not, but he doesn't hold any power, as Frank said.
So
the supreme leader is the ultimate authority.
And they're actually the foreign minister. They all have to revert up to the National Council.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. Very interesting. I learnt a lot. Thank you very much for coming in, Caroline Hawley and Frank Gardner. We'll continue to answer your questions. There are lots of questions still to be answered about what has happened across the country in the last 12 hours or so. But the Iranians putting out a statement in the last hour or so that 201 people have been killed, 747 injured in 24 provinces that have been hit, and the Israelis confirming that 500 targets were struck since this morning. We'll continue to bring you all the breaking news on the situation in Iran. You're watching BBC News.
Let's cross now to the Foreign Ministry in Tehran. We can speak to the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Ismail Baghai. Thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is interesting.
Can we first begin with the latest on the impact of these strikes on the senior political and military leadership in Iran? There are reports that a number of senior leaders, including the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, were targeted in Israel's strikes. Can you confirm for us whether the top leadership is still alive, or where are they?
I'm not in a situation to confirm anything.
Oh, we've lost the feed somehow.
The point is that our people are, the whole system, the whole
some technical issues. I don't know if you can hear it. We've got some technical issues.
Integrity on our
somewhere.
sovereignty and
Bear
territorial
with me.
integrity. So what we are doing right now is to defend with all force against this.
No, the audio is coming through.
acts
That's
of
fine. That's
aggression
my
by
own technical
Israel
issue.
and by Americans.
But could I ask you, obviously, it would be of concern to the foreign ministry if the supreme leader has been targeted. There are consistent reports that his residence, his offices were targeted this morning. Can you give us at least a confirmation or a denial as to whether or not those residences were targeted?
I can tell you that many places, many targets were hit across the country, including a number of schools, a number of primary schools, in particular one elementary school, and more than 150 innocent girls were killed and maimed, and many of them are still under the rubble in Minab, Hormozgan province, south of Iran.
That was one of the first detailed reports to emerge of civilian casualties at school in southern Iran. We understand that the school was very close to a base of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Can you give us more details about that attack?
That's simply a way of normalizing atrocity and atrocious crime. Simply to say those civilian targets were hit because they were in the vicinity of military bases. That's nonsensical. They indiscriminately and intentionally attacked these places. They killed, they massacred our people, they massacred innocent girls, not only in Minab, but also in other places, in Lamer, Fars province also. So they are just calling them collateral damage, and by that they just try to somehow justify these acts of aggression and these acts of mass killings.
Iran has retaliated as it said it would. You have now attacked countries right across the region, including your Arab allies. They have all condemned your attacks. Don't you risk losing the key support you need among your regional partners at this time?
Two things. I think how you qualify a given act matters. It is not retaliation. It is an act of self-defense recognized under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Secondly, we have not attacked any country. They are all our friends. What we have done we have defended against an action by the United States. And we all know that in accordance with international, no country is allowed to let other countries, to let the aggressor abuse or use its facilities, its soil, in order to attack another country. What we are doing is defending our national territory, our sovereignty against an act of aggression. And we all know that those bases, those military bases which are under full control of the United States, are being used to conduct military attack against Iran.
But that's not how your allies are seeing it. As I mentioned, they have issued a statement condemning your attacks. The Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, has been on the telephone to all of these capitals. What are they telling you?
Yes, that's why we really value our friendship with the countries of the region. That's why the diplomatic process that was betrayed by the United States just recently started in the region. The countries of the region were involved in this process because everyone understands that the security of the region, security of all countries of the region are interrelated, interconnected. And what matters most is that the countries of the region understand that the main threat to our collective security, to the future of the security of this region, is Israel, which is talking about the greater Israel. And now the United States is being dragged into its war of aggression against the whole region. So this is not only against Iran, this is against the whole region.
They did do their best. Many of the leaders in the region had been working around the clock to avert a war. But in their first statements, they didn't condemn the attacks by Israel, backed by the United States. Their first condemnation was of your attacks. So this seems to put you in a weaker position diplomatically, just at a time when you need your allies.
Minister Araghchi has been in close contact with his counterparts in the region, and I think everyone in the region understands that this war was not started by Iran. It was imposed on us and on the region. And the point is that, again, that we are not attacking any country in the region. We have no problem, no issue with our Arab neighbors. The only thing we are doing is to conduct an act of self-defense against those bases which are being used by the United States to attack Iran. In a way, the United States is abusing the territory of the Arab countries of the region in order to launch an act of aggression against Iran. And this is, frankly, this is in violation of basic principles of international law.
Right, we will have the 6 o'clock news. I will cover this with you, and then I will send you to the extra channel. And you wait out for Martyn. He'll be back with more updates.
Hello. The final day of February
Anna watching weather. You are not interested in weather forecast for British weather. We'll be covering more later in the day. Martyn will be joining me shortly, and he'll follow after me. Let's have a look at the markets. Bitcoin on the hour. Bitcoin is pushing up 65,434 for one coin. We've got XRP $1.20, $1.33 now, and we've got Ethereum going up as well. So we have something that has been catalyzing the market. I'm looking out for more updates.
Milder air bringing with it a lot of cloud, bringing some mist.
Got update from Qatar. Qatar holds public events until further notice. As we have been reporting through the day, several waves of explosions have been heard in the sky above the Qatari capital Doha. Now Qatar has announced the suspension of all public events, gatherings and entertainment at hotels and tourism sites until further notice. It also halted all Ramadan tents
So yes, some
and
rain for some of us
iftars,
on
with
Monday,
which
but
hotels
by
and tourist
Tuesday,
venue
most areas
typically
will be dry,
host for
bit of cloud,
companies,
some sunshine,
government entities, and
feeling
public
rather
during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. We've got some more updates. Kuwait cancels Ramadan and Thursday prayers until further notice. Kuwait City Ministry of Islamic Affairs has announced the cancellation of Taraweeh prayers, a night prayer performed during Ramadan in all mosques around until further notice. It also ordered the halting of performance of Thursday prayers until further notice. So we have more development.
For people to try and
We are waiting for the
But this is where Gil would have been
news on the hour. Stand by, I will bring you the BBC news scope, and then I will send you off to
And there's a
to
tantalising
Martyn.
paper trail to the man accused of bribing him. These are details from the Parliament's
Right, BBC
own
is not ready
website
yet. BBC
detailing
is not ready yet.
Nathan
We've got
Gill's
more
trip
footage,
in 2018.
more damages from Dubai as well.
Watch on BBC iPlayer.
We are monitoring multiple news outlets.
The director can come over to me and say, "Hey, I
BBC
just want to
should
add a
be
little
live
jerk here,
shortly
an extra
with
bump
their-
there, and in
with
a
their
few
news.
clicks of a button, I can do that."
This is the forefront of the technology.
Okay, we've got Israeli Prime Minister to speak live on Sky News. So let's dive it into that. That will be interesting.
Iran down to Saudi Arabia. You know, what is your justification for this, and what do you envisage for the day after? You know, how is this going to lead to a better future for Iran and for the region? You know, given all the misgivings and all the reasons that, as you say, for historical reasons, but for other political reasons as well, there is going to be a lot of unease about what comes next.
Dominic, stay where you are if you would. It has just gone 6 o'clock. You're watching the News Hour on Sky News. You're looking at a podium where we are expecting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make a statement shortly. We can also take you to Iraq, show you scenes from Baghdad. Here, protesters have taken to the streets in solidarity with Iran. Our International Affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is with us. Dominic, talk about the wider region and what has been going on today. Clearly, Gulf states have been commentating, many also under attack where US bases are situated. What are the wider ramifications?
Well, I think, you know, it's worth bearing in mind, Jonathan, that publicly, I think a lot of allies of America and sort of new allies of Israel, so those countries that under the Abraham Accords have normalised relations with Israel, so the Gulf states and others, they have been urging the Americans not to do anything rash and to think twice about tipping the region into war. And so they will be, I think, deeply uneasy and deeply concerned about this, because the Iranians appear to have sort of taken their gloves off in reaction, in response to what the Americans and Israelis are doing, because they see now a maximalist campaign by both the Israelis and the Americans. So the Iranians seem to be now aiming their missiles at sort of areas of population density in the Emirates, but also at oil industry targets across the region. And they look like they're trying to cause the maximum amount of chaos and harm and concern, in the hope that those allies are now going to put as much pressure on Donald Trump to call this off as soon as possible. You know, you have to say that I think, you know, a lot of those governments would welcome the collapse of the regime. They would love to see the back of the Ayatollahs in Tehran, who've caused them enormous trouble over the years. But they have in more recent years restored diplomatic relations with Tehran. Iran is not the ostracized rogue state as far as its neighbors are concerned that it has been in the past. And therefore, there will be less, I think, jubilation if this does bring about the end of the regime. And it will cause, I think, a lot of concern about this possibility of chaos. The last thing that Jordan or the Gulf states over the Persian Gulf from Iran, Turkey and other countries bordering Iran will want to see is a collapsing state descending into some kind of anarchy and civil war. And they will blame the Americans and the Israelis if it comes to that. We're a long way from that. We're just a day into this. But I think, you know, diplomatically, these countries are going to be putting as much pressure on the Americans as possible. and saying to them, have you thought this through? Have you worked out what the next day will bring? Have you worked out what might happen if this war, as all wars do, metastasizes into something bigger and more regional? And I think for the rest of us, the big concern, as we're looking at these pictures of Iraqis protesting, is that kind of chaos we're seeing sort of erupting across the region, how that might translate in terms of the impact on the global economy. I think one of the most worrying things we've heard today is the IRGC saying, in a very predictable way, that it will try to close the Strait of Hormuz. That is the kind of pinch point in the eastern end of the Persian Gulf. That would be fairly easy to block for a while at least if you can sink a tanker or mine it or send Iranian warships into that kind of jugular, if you like, of the global economy. Through that waterway, a fifth of the world's oil passes. A lot of it goes to China. But anything that disrupts that will affect the price of crude, and that could have global ramifications economically as well. So I think as we're looking at these pictures of people protesting on the streets in Iraq, there will be diplomatic protests across the region being levelled at Americans, some Israeli diplomats, but I think mainly at the American diplomats in the State Department, saying, have you thought this through? What happens next? Have you thought about what happens to the global economy? And they will be seeking assurances that this is going to be over quickly. And I think all the signs we have so far is that this is planned to be a fairly sustained and prolonged campaign because the Americans have built up so much military firepower. Now, we did hear from the Pentagon misgivings that were leaked by top commanders saying that they did worry about this armada, or these multiple armadas in the region, not having sufficient ammunition or munitions to see this campaign through. But certainly there's enough there for at least a couple of weeks. And I think beyond that, America's allies are going to be urging Washington to either bring about as much change as they can or then call it a day. The difficulty for Donald Trump, of course, is that once he's got stuck into this, the deeper he's in, the deeper he is committed to it. If it doesn't lead to a change in regime, if it only leads to more chaos, then people in the region are going to be wondering what people back home are going to be wondering, which is why has an American president yet again tried to change a regime in the Middle East and only cause yet more chaos and bloodshed.
I just remind viewers, we are waiting for a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's due at 6 o'clock, clearly running a few minutes late, but we will bring that to you as soon as it starts. Also hearing that the UAE is urging citizens and residents through text message to remain indoors and await official instructions. Dominic, it was interesting, wasn't it, as part of Donald Trump's speech, he did state the case for a potentially sustained conflict. We were talking a moment or two ago about how long this might last, and he even talked about the impact it could have on US forces.
Yeah, he did, and I think he was fairly honest about that, and I think he was certainly, as you say, preparing Americans for the possibility that American servicemen and women could be killed and injured, and there could be casualties as far as the Americans are concerned in this campaign. And I think the Iranians will be trying to do that. They'll be trying to bring down an American airplane. They'll be trying to kidnap an downed American pilot. And they know that it will be easier for them to do that in terms of the impact it will have on the campaign than it will be for Donald Trump to secure his objectives in this war, which are much more extreme, which is appeared to be a change of regime in Iran. And that, I guess, is the potential pitfall for the American president looking at this, is there are going to be American planes, there are going to be Israeli planes flying in the skies over Iran. Its air defences were emasculated in the 12-day war, and before that by the Iranian Air Force last year. And its air defences have been pretty much dismantled. But there's always the danger of that, and also there's the danger of course, this formidable ballistic missile arsenal that the Iranians have in South Iran and at sea, being aimed at the American allies and assets and bases over the sea in the Persian Gulf. We've already seen these missiles coming down in Bahrain, in Qatar and in the UAE. And they're not just aiming at American bases, they seem to be aiming at hotels and parts of the Emirates, at least, where you can expect many people to be assembled. If there are a lot of civilians killed in this, then whoever has fired, or I think regardless who's fired the missiles, the Americans are going to get blamed to a certain extent. And I think the perception of the regions descending into chaos without achieving any particular objectives is going to be something that's going to be harder and harder for Donald Trump to cope with politically. But as you say, it was a bellicose speech. It was a speech full of, justifications in the sense of historic grievance from the US president, talking about attacks the Iranians were responsible for going back to the 80s in Beirut when many American Marines were killed in the blasts there, going back to attacks carried out by Iranian proxies, Hezbollah and others around the world against Western, American and other assets, and saying that enough is enough. I think the difficulty for Donald Trump as he presented that, though, was that he had said in the State of Union address, where he didn't prepare the Americans for any of this at all, but also in other pronouncements recently, that he wanted and he preferred a diplomatic solution. And then we saw last week in Geneva, where I was reporting a concerted effort, it seemed by both sides, mediated by the Omanis, to try and make progress diplomatically. And those talks, which I think many people feared could have broken down, leading to war, actually didn't break down. They broke up with a plan to continue talking next week in Vienna in what were described by the Omanis as technical talks. And when you have technical talks in diplomacy, that is working out the details, and it assumes that you have, at least in principle, reached some kind of agreement. And fairly well-sourced reporters said that they have been told by the American negotiators, Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, and his chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff, that they felt the talks had been positive. So that's the note that things ended on in Geneva. There was scepticism about that. But certainly there's no diplomatic excuse for carrying out this extraordinary air campaign, or launching it at least today. There's no reason to say that diplomacy had failed, because it hadn't. There were more legs to the diplomatic process, but Donald Trump has not chosen to see where that would lead. So the accusation against him, I guess, is that it was a charade, that he was using diplomacy to kind of fool the Iranians to try and play for time while getting the final pieces in place, and that will be seen as a rather cynical strategy. As it was last year in the run-up to the 12-day war, when I interviewed Ismail Baghai in Tehran that time, as Mark Austin has just done here. And he was full of resentment of the fact, as was his boss, Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, that the Americans had been using diplomacy as a kind of way of fooling their enemy, of playing for time, and then using that as a cover for preparing for a war. So there'll be, yet more resentment amongst the Iranians and accusations that the Americans could have pursued this more diplomatically. I think at a different level, America's allies will also be asking of the Americans why they did not make the most, why they didn't sort of, eke out as much progress from that diplomatic process in Geneva going on to Vienna as was possible, and why instead they've chosen to tip the region into this, I guess, uncertain and unpredictable now series of events.
OK, Dominic, thank you very much for the moment. If you're just joining us, we are waiting for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to address the cameras. That was due at 6 o'clock. We're still waiting for that, delayed somewhat. We'll bring that to you, of course, as soon as it happens. In the meantime, we have just heard from US CENTCOM, Central Command, saying that they have successfully defended against hundreds of Iranian missile and drone attacks in the region. They say that there have been no reports of any US casualties or combat-related injuries. Damage to US installations was minimal and has not impacted operations. So the Americans' response there to Iran's response to those military strikes, which began in the early hours of this morning.
Muted again. Okay, so I will have to go. I'll have to end this event. Martyn will follow after me shortly. I will send you to the extra channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, definitely thanks for your likes. But if you subscribe and press this little bell up here next to your subscribe button, you will get notification when Martyn follows after me. He's gathering more and more information. He's preparing more and more insights. I'm speaking to Martyn Martyn now. He's not ready. He will follow after me shortly. He needs to get all his information ready for you. So, I will send you to the extra channel. Stay where you are, and then Martyn will follow after me shortly. So, thank you very much for joining me. Unfortunately, we'll be now going through probably some hard times. I'm sending love to Sensei, whose family is involved in there. We know that Sensei is from Iran, so when you see Sensei again, please send him your concerns and send him your love. I think he needs it more than ever. Thank you very much for joining me. I will catch you later. Next will be Martyn following after me shortly. That's it from me. Take care of yourselves and each other.
Flattened, but it seems the Supreme Leader had been taken elsewhere. Iran says he is unhurt.
Can you confirm with specificity that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is alive and separate?